Welcome to ENG 4E. This is term 2A. We are working on class 9 today and looking at assignments K15 and K16. We're going to talk about semicolons and colons a little bit today in class. And I'm Jillian Percy. Here are the ways to reach me. Email is probably the fastest and most convenient way. I check it constantly throughout the day. Jillian.percy@necschools.org. And that's Jillian with a G, by the way, which I know is unusual. You can also call me at the office, 1-800-667-3703, and my extension is 2211. You can also check me out on Facebook and YouTube with capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. YouTube also has all the old recordings from this class, but also from previous terms, although this is the first time I've taught the class this year. If you hand anything in, please send it to studentwork@nec.on.ca. If you send it to me directly, then the secretary doesn't see it. And then if anything ever happened to me and a new teacher took over the course, they couldn't see your assignments. So please try and send it through there so we can kind of follow all the proper channels. That way we don't lose anything. Make sure your full name, your course name, assignment number or name, depending on which one it's got. If it asks you for a rough and a good draft, please label which one is which and include them both in the same email. If you need to take a photograph of an assignment for any reason, please send it as an attachment. Don't put it in the body of the email. It doesn't want to print off properly. It doesn't show properly on the computer. All right. Today's work, we're going to understand the purposes of using a colon in your writing, identify when colons are being used correctly or incorrectly, create sentences that use colons correctly, understand the purposes of using a semicolon in your writing, identify when semicolons are being used correctly or incorrectly, create sentences that use semicolons correctly, and then remember and utilize correct paragraph format to demonstrate the understanding of grammar concepts and parts of speech, and create paragraphs that use semicolons correctly within them. Okay. We're going to cover colons first. I don't think they're used as commonly in writing. I also think they're a lot easier to understand, really. A colon is used for multiple reasons. It can be used to give emphasis. It can present dialogue. It can introduce lists or text, or it can clarify composition titles. So for emphasis, it's when you've got a whole sentence and you're kind of leading up to a concept and then you announce the concept. So here's an example, like, he had only one goal, the destruction of his enemies. It was her favorite holiday, Christmas. The sound that had haunted him throughout his dreams, the memory of her screams. You could say it less dramatically, like, Christmas was her favorite holiday. This is a very dramatic way of writing. It's used probably more commonly in narrative writing than it is in nonfiction writing, but it certainly does get used in nonfiction writing as well. Okay, dialogue. In like a play or a commercial or a radio podcast or whatever, this designates who is speaking. Okay, so piggy number 1, colon, no, you can't come in. Big bad wolf, colon, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow the house down. So here we're not using quotation marks because if you're looking at a play, the entire thing is dialogue. So this just becomes a much simpler way to write it, okay? You'll also see it in like magazines where someone's doing an interview with somebody. They may put the person's name, or like this one, they've just put Q&A. So the question with a colon is, what do you find scarier, launching a novel or launching into space? And Chris Hadfield's answer, Chris Hadfield is a Canadian astronaut. A, things aren't scary, just sometimes people are scared. Things are just things. Some people are terrified by small spaces, and some people are terrified by big spaces. Some people are terrified by a cat or a worm or whatever, but none of these things are scary. They might be dangerous, but whether you choose to be scared or not is personal. Okay. You can also use it to introduce lists, text, or tabular material. If you're doing this, you don't need to capitalize the first word after the colon unless it's a proper noun like somebody's name, or it's the start of a complete sentence. So here's an example where we don't capitalize. Here's what you need to bring to summer camp, colon, sunglasses, sunscreen, 5 pairs of shorts or pants, 5 t-shirts, 5 pairs of socks, 5 pairs of underwear, 2 pairs of shoes, one that can get wet. This is all part of the same sentence, so you don't need a capital there. Here, if we're introducing Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech, it's the beginning of his speech. He actually has the first word here is I, which is already capitalized. But even if it wasn't an I, if it was a different word like the, we would still capitalize it because it's probably the beginning of his speech. So it would have a capital letter. All right. And the other one is one you're going to see on books, lectures, other compositions, where sometimes there's like a main title and then there's a subtitle. So they say that expresses two parallel ideas. I would say it kind of expands on the first idea. So computer, ooh, that's a pretty big subject. Well, what are they going to be talking about? A history of the information machine. Now, on the picture of the book, you can see there's not actually a colon there. But if you were saying, hey, I read this book, Computer, a History of the Information Machine, I would put the colon there. Here's my main heading. Here's kind of the subheading. It makes a little bit more sense. It makes it more clear to your reader what they're looking at. Okay. Okay, so here we have some sentences that need a colon. Where do they belong? So the first sentence says, oh, she knew he could be there for only one reason, revenge. Okay, so you can hear as I'm saying it, that's one of the ones where you're doing it for dramatic pause. So right after the word reason is your colon. Okay, the next one, I thought I had taken that out. It must have bounced itself back in there. Villain, colon, I will never give up, right? The villain is the person who's speaking. These are his words. She found an old journal in the attic. When she opened it up, she read, colon, I had the most wonderful day. And it is all because of Peter. I can't wait to see him again. So here we're introducing this journal that she's going to be reading. Number 4, her new textbook looked like it would be interesting. A history of modern Canada, the world, the wars created. Okay, there are two parts to that title. A history of modern Canada is kind of the main one. And then the subheading is the world, the wars created. So it might be talking about the Civil Wars or it might be talking about the World Wars. We'd have to read it to find out. Try my new Halloween craft. To get started, you will need green and black construction paper, glue, scissors, googly eyes, and some silver glitter. Okay, that's an odd sentence until you realize, well, it's a list. And to introduce the list, we can use a colon. Okay. Semicolons. Semicolons look like a comma with a little period on top. It can join two main clauses in a compound sentence, and it can take the place of the following conjunctions. And, but, however, for, or, so, and yet. So here are some examples. On Tuesday, Lori and her friends will be rehearsing their play, Friends, and setting up the stage for presentation. Semicolon, it will be an important day. Okay, those are two separate sentences, but they're linked. So they've used a semicolon to link them. Patrick has been practicing for his literacy test. Semicolon, it is scheduled for next Tuesday. A semicolon is also used to separate items in a series when the items already contain other punctuation. You'll see this with place names. I'm just going to kind of add that here. Place names. You'll also see it with dates or sometimes really complicated phrases. Let me show you what I mean there. So here, the Joneses family visited Moncton, New Brunswick, semicolon, Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia, semicolon, and Corner Brook, Newfoundland, period. We don't need a semicolon there because the sentence has ended. Okay, so I want to show you a quick little video on this. It's one of those things that I don't feel like semicolons is really taught very much in grade school. At least I didn't know anybody who taught it, but you'll see it a lot in writing. So it's kind of one of those things we kind of need to catch up and teach now.
Don't you hate it when you're writing and you hit this? Yeah, I know, it's a semicolon. But when was the last time you even used it? It certainly seems like we should be using it a lot. I mean, look at it right there on your keyboard. VIP seating. Take that, $sign. How do you even use this thing? Think of your sentence as traffic on a road. A period breaks it into different segments, like a red light. A comma is like a green light. It may slow traffic down a little, but it's not going to change the speed dramatically. And a yellow light causes traffic to hesitate for a moment to give traffic a little bit of room to just breathe. A semicolon can break a list-like sentence up into several smaller sections. They stay more closely associated than separate sentences would. If two short sentences refer to the same subject, they can be joined up with a semicolon.
Connect the first part of a sentence with another clause that's closely related to it, okay, without using a conjunction.
But semicolons should never go before coordinating conjunctions, like and, but, or so. That's a comma spot. Where did this weird punctuation move come from? You can thank the Roman Navy. Early Romans had a phrase, hasten slowly. When writing its phrase out, it was represented by an anchor above a dolphin, as in slow down like a dolphin does among the anchors. In the 15th century, Venetian printer Aldus Manutius stylized the ancient symbol and adopted it as his printer's mark, only he was using it as an abbreviation. As the printing press spread literacy through the 15th century, punctuation marks became standardized among writing. Playwright and poet Ben Jonson is credited as the first noble English writer to use the semicolon systematically in his work. He was known for relying heavily on quotes of earlier writers. Many among them were protégés and fans of Manutius, who happened to keep the Venetians' classic mark alive. Semicolon use surged over the next 200 years. Then, the 20th century hit, and the semicolon started to disappear. What happened? In a 1993 study for applied linguistics, Paul Bruthio studied punctuation marks in writing manuals from the 16th century through the 20th. Bruthio concluded that a shift from spoken to written words for communication appeared to be responsible for its rise, but a trend towards simplified sentences led to its downfall. Another emerging technology may have hammered a nail into the semicolon's coffin, the telegraph. Punctuation marks cost just as much as a letter, so short lines were more profitable to send, especially across the Atlantic, when words could cost about $5 each. Anti-semicolon sentiment became common in writers as well. Despite all that, semicolons have discovered new purposes in modern life. Early emoticons gave it widespread usage. Programming languages adopted the semicolon to indicate the end of a statement. And if you've seen someone with a tattoo of a semicolon, it's taken on a new purpose for them. Through Project Semicolon, the punctuation is a symbol for suicide survivors, who could have ended their lives, but chose not to end the sentence just yet. So, despite its changing definition, this little punctuation mark isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Its prominent position on the keyboard is well deserved. There are people who rely on it every day, for grammar, programming, or support.
Okay. I know probably a little bit more history about punctuation mark than you wanted to know, but it is kind of interesting. And also you can see how it gets used differently. I did not know the thing about the survivor of suicide thing that I thought was really interesting. Okay, so here we've got a bunch of sentences. We need to put a semicolon in there, and where would be the right spot in the sentence? Exercising helps to keep you healthy and fit. Good nutrition is also important. So where does that first sentence end? Because clearly they're joining two sentences. Exercising helps to keep you healthy and fit. That's where I would put a period. But in this case, they're trying to combine the two ideas that exercise and good nutrition work together. So semicolon, space. My son likes going fishing. He doesn't like putting the worms on the hooks. So my son likes going fishing is a sentence all by itself. And so I'm going to put my semicolon there, and then I'm just going to read it back and make sure it makes sense. My son likes going fishing, pause. He doesn't like putting the worms on the hooks. Now, why am I saying pause? Traditionally, one of the easier ways to teach grammar, I don't think it's effective, but when I was in school, it was often taught that the role of like a comma or a semicolon was to put a little pause in your sentence, right? And I've often read something like recently where um, comma is one pause, like one beat. Semicolon is two beats. A colon is three beats, and then a period is four beats. I don't know if that still stands true, maybe just because we talk faster, but it is the idea that you're pausing to understand what's come before. Number three, pink is my favorite color. I also like purple. Now, if you weren't sure where the first sentence ends, one thing to look about is where do we see a, a new subject beginning? So pink is my favorite color. All right, there's the end of one sentence because I is starting a new concept. I also like purple. Number four, I hate math. I never understand the questions. When I see the I showing up twice, that is a really strong hint that I might have two sentences there. So I hate math. Yep, that stands on its own. So I can put my semicolon there. I never understand the questions. Yep. And then I've got my end of my sentence, which for some reason vanished the period. Number five, my new cat wants to make friends. My old cat wants to be left alone. All right, you can see there's kind of a parallel sentence structure there. My new cat, my old cat. So my old cat is starting the next sentence. So right before it, I'm going to put my semicolon. So now we've got my new cat wants to make friends, semicolon. My old cat wants to be left alone. Number six, I don't sleep well at night. I am always tired during the day. All right, again, we've got that I. I'm going to try and put it there and see if it makes sense. I don't sleep well at night, semicolon. I am always tired during the day. Remember that with a semicolon, both sides should be a complete sentence. Let me see here. I'm trying to think of a way to put this, but if you had something with just a partial of a sentence, like just during the day for some reason, I couldn't put a semicolon there because during the day could not stand on its own as a complete sentence. Okay. So our first question or assignment, I guess, key question number 15 is using semicolons. It's worth 5 marks. Write 5 sentences of your own to show that you understand the semicolon. And we tried different ways, right? The most common one is to connect to related sentences. For example, I have been saving money to buy a boat, semicolon. I just passed someone's house that had one on sale. Okay. So for this 5 clear sentences, they must use a semicolon. All right. Let's take a look at the next bit. This is talking generally. Do we really need to use semicolons in our writing? For this exercise, you do just because I want you to have the practice. However, this is one of those things that in modern times, there's a lot of discussion lately about grammar. Some writers absolutely hate semicolons. They never use them. They feel they're pretentious and overdone. One reason, too, is they were used more in the past because authors tended to create much longer sentences. Like you might see somebody write like 10 different short sentences and join them together using conjunctions and semicolons and colons. But we've kind of moved away from that. We've moved towards much shorter sentences that are easier to understand and where semicolons just aren't as necessary. I'm not really sure why, but there's really been a modern movement towards shorter sentences. Maybe just because they're easier to understand. I'm not sure. However, before we go on to the next one, I have one quote from somebody who quite likes them and then conveniently kind of shows how to use them. And I wanted to show you a professional one, not just like my made up sentences. So this is from Claire Masad. In compiling the sentence, efficiency, or more precisely, precision, is important, semicolon. Capacity is important, semicolon, and clarity is important. This kind of writer, at least, doesn't think in little stoppered declarative sentences. It isn't like that. not really ever. Perhaps for some people, but not for us. For those of us whose thoughts digress, for whom unexpected juxtapositions are exhilarating rather than tiresome, who aim, if always inadequately, to convey life's experience in some semblance of its complexity, for such writers, the semicolon is invaluable. And I love this because as she wrote it, she used semicolons to create the kind of longer, more complicated sentences that she likes using. And then in the middle, she uses little tiny sentences with periods to show that this is what I don't like. And she kind of goes to extremes, like not really ever isn't an actual sentence. It's like incomplete fragment. Perhaps for some people, incomplete, but not for us, incomplete. So this is a lovely little paragraph to show you the two different types of sentences. All right. Key question number 16 is a journal writing assignment, and it's worth 10 marks. They want you to write a paragraph consisting of at least 6 sentences on a topic of your choice. Try to include at least 2 semicolons in 2 of your sentences. As well, try to use some adjectives and adverbs and participles to make your writing more interesting. I have to say, I think it'd be just about impossible to write a paragraph that did not include participles. Remember, participles are either the ed or the ing ending in writing. I can't even conceive of it. Adjectives are where you're describing your nouns. Adverbs are where you're describing your verbs, or sometimes also your adjectives or other adverbs, right? We've talked about that. If you're not sure, you can go back a class or two and kind of review that. All right. Quick reminder, you do have to follow paragraph format. So you can't just have 6 random sentences that aren't connected. Which of these statements correctly describes the paragraph format? Is it A, any group of sentences based on a single topic? B, an opening sentence followed by 3 to 5 detail sentences that explain your ideas? C, an opening sentence that is supported by at least 3 to 5 sentences, wrapped up by a concluding sentence that restates the main topic sentence? Or D, a half page of text, regardless of how many sentences it has? Okay, so I was taught in school when you're looking at multiple choice, eliminate the answers that are obviously wrong right away. So I'm going to kind of go through D. A half page of text, regardless of how many sentences, is 100% wrong. That does not qualify as a paragraph. Any group of sentences based on a single topic. Well, a paragraph does have to have a single topic, but that isn't a big enough definition. It's a very incomplete definition is how I would put that. All right, so I'm going to cross that off as well. There we go. Now we've got 2 that are very similar. An opening sentence followed by 3 to 5 detail sentences that explains your ideas. That sounds pretty close. Or an opening sentence that's supported by at least 3 to 5 sentences, wrapped up by a concluding sentence that restates the main topic sentence. Well, if I think about the hamburger picture, remember we talk about the hamburger format. We've got our top bun with our opening sentence, and then our bottom bun with our concluding sentence. B does not mention a concluding sentence, so it cannot be correct. And I'm going to cross that off. That only leaves us with an opening sentence that is supported by 3 to 5 sentences, wrapped up by a concluding sentence that restates the main topic. I'm going to highlight this in green. One of the things I do find is this concluding sentence, a lot of people skip it. But just picture if you were visiting somebody, right? And you say hello and you have this awesome conversation. And then right in the middle of talking, you walk out the back door and slam the door. You don't say goodbye. You don't say, I have to go. You don't say it was lovely talking to you. You just leave. When you're writing a paragraph and you don't write a concluding sentence, it's as if you're talking to your reader and you just took off out the back door when they weren't looking. So please always include a concluding sentence that restates your main topic. It's just considered basically polite to your reader and good writing. This guy had a lovely little video on paragraph
The
structure that I
ability to
thought
write a successful essay
explained things really
begins
well.
with the ability to write a strong paragraph. So I want to talk about basic paragraph structure and a little bit about what makes an effective paragraph. Okay, so every paragraph has the same three basic components. You have your topic sentence, your supporting sentences, and your concluding sentence. Now the topic sentence is important because it's the main idea of the entire paragraph. The supporting sentences have one job, which is to develop the main idea or to support the topic sentence with examples, detail, explanation. The concluding sentence is there to give the paragraph closure and to touch upon the main idea, to give the reader the idea that the topic is now finished and that you're moving on to something else. Okay, so the entire paragraph stems from the topic sentence. So it's really important to have a strong topic sentence. Let's look at an example of a good one. Taking too many university courses at once can have potentially serious consequences. Okay, so this is a strong topic sentence for a couple reasons. One, it has a clear topic. In this case, taking too many university courses at once. Also, it has a main idea. In this case, potentially serious consequences. It's also effective because it gives the reader an idea of what kind of paragraph they're going to be reading, whether it's descriptive, narrative, opinion-based, comparison. Now in this case, it's clearly going to be a paragraph discussing the effects of taking too many courses. All right, now let's look at 4 example topic sentences. You can even pause the video for a minute and look at these 4 sentences and decide which do you think is the strongest topic sentence here.
I'm going to pause it for a second. 4 out of 5 teenagers in Canada have cell phones. That's a fact. I don't know that it's a topic sentence. Driving is very stressful. I'm not sure. How I learned to be more patient. That sounds more like a title than a topic sentence. In this paragraph, I would like to discuss the importance of food in Italian culture. I think that's intended to be a topic sentence. Let's see what he says.
All right, that was actually a bit of a trick question because none of these 4 sentences are strong topic sentences. Each of them is problematic in one way or another. So let's look at them. Number 1, 4 out of 5 teenagers in Canada have cell phones. Now the problem with that is that it's a fact, and therefore it's too specific, it's too narrow to be a topic sentence. There's no idea to develop in your supporting sentences. Number 2, driving is very stressful. That's also problematic, but for the opposite reason. It's too broad. It's too big of an idea. You have to be more specific, less generalized. Driving where or when? Stressful for whom? Number 3, how I learned to be more patient. Now this is a good topic, but it's not a topic sentence because it's incomplete. Make sure that your topic sentence has a clear subject, verb, and is a completed idea. Okay. Number 4, in this paragraph, I would like to discuss the importance of food in Italian culture. Now, this is a common mistake in topic sentences. Don't announce your topic. Don't tell the reader what you're going to discuss. Simply state your opinion or your main idea. Now, let's look at some revised versions of those sentences to see some improvements. Okay. Number 1. Cell phones should be banned from classrooms for several reasons. Now this is good because there's now an opinion. It's no longer a fact, and the writer has taken a clear position. Number 2, driving on the highway in heavy traffic is stressful for many motorists. Again, this is better because now it's more specific. 3, having a child taught me the importance of being patient. An improvement because you now have a clear subject, verb, and a complete thought. And number 4, food is an essential part of Italian culture. You're no longer announcing what you're going to discuss, so that's much better. Okay.
All right, so I really like this because not only does he explain what a poor topic sentence is, he kind of walks us through how we can fix them. I think the topic sentence is a really tricky thing. And sometimes if you don't get that right, it can kind of throw off the rest of the paragraph because it's sort of your starting point. So let's take a look at, okay, transition words. The other thing I wanted to talk about is using transition words. I feel like some people just use them automatically in their writing. Some people aren't as comfortable and don't use them. And again, I'm not really sure if they're a common strategy in other languages. They are a big thing in English, especially in English writing. It's a kind of a little more formal way of connecting your sentences. I don't know if we do this so much in conversation, but it's a huge part of writing, especially of writing a strong paragraph. So yesterday, we kind of talked about the different types of transition words that can be used to help connect different sentences to each other. And the idea like connect them in concept, right? So the three types we were looking at were chronological or sequencing transition words like first, after that, finally. We also looked at ones that were adversarial, like that showed contrast. Conversely, on the other hand, either way. And then we also looked at additive, sorry, in addition, as well, furthermore, where you're kind of wanting to add another concept to what you've been saying. What else makes a great paragraph? A great paragraph is going to be interesting to read. It might be funny or moving. It might be beautiful or shocking. It may not always tell us something new, but it will talk about the topic in an unusual way that captures our attention in some way. Like if we were looking at the topics that the gentleman just discussed, say, food is an important aspect of Italian culture, that could be written about in a very dry way, or somebody could write about it in a very funny way that by the end of it, you're kind of smiling. Or you could write about it in a very heart-rending or moving way where you talk about, the importance of food growing up and how you kind of miss your mom because she's gone and that kind of thing. There's more than one way to write a paragraph. And when we take it that step above just trying to write a sentence, it can really help gel our paragraph into something amazing. Okay. The the one big kind of practical problem I see is run-on sentences. And that's why we talked about transitions the other day is sometimes people are doing run-on sentences to try and connect their thoughts together, whereas transition words are actually a better way to do it. So let's take a look at run-on sentences. They're probably the most common error I see when I'm doing marking. And to be honest, it's probably the thing I do most often when I'm writing quickly. It's the first thing I'm going to run into, which is why I always have to check and read my own writing to make sure I haven't done run-on sentences. I do find when I'm marking that there are certain patterns that show up again and again with this particular writing issue. So rather than just talking generally, I'm going to give you like a very specific example and show you different ways you can fix it. Because there's more than one way to fix it. And that's where the revising step comes in, right? Revising is awesome. I know some people hate it, but it is the spot where you can take your writing and turn it from something kind of bland and it's serviceable and you jazz it up. Like as if you had a potato at supper and someone just put the potato there. Well, it's there, it's filling, but wouldn't it be a more amazing potato if you added butter and maybe some sour cream, possibly some chives or bacon? So when you're doing your revising, it's like when you're taking that plain potato of a sentence and adding all the interesting toppings that make it something really compelling and interesting to read. Okay, so one thing I see is lots of little short sentences that have been joined with commas. So here would be an example of this type of run-on sentence. We love to go fishing in the spring. We get to spend time together. We tell family stories at night. We enjoy the time on the land. So here, the writer is using the same simple sentence pattern over and over and just kind of joining them up with commas rather than using periods. And the pattern is we plus an action verb plus an adverb or prepositional phrase. And often it's because they don't really like how the short sentences sound if you use periods. They want their writing to have more of a flow, which is a great goal. But let's look at some alternative ways to meet that goal. First of all, we can join two of the sentences using a coordinating conjunction. Remember that those are for and nor, but, or, yet, or so. So for this one, here's our sentence again. We love to go fishing in the spring. We get to spend time together. We tell family stories at night. We enjoy the time on the land. So we're going to just join two of them together. We love to go fishing in the spring, so we get to spend time together. So is telling you the reason, like one of the reasons you're going fishing is in order to spend time together. Then we're going to join the next two sentences. We tell family stories at night and we enjoy the time on the land. So there you're beginning to get that flow in the sentences, but you're doing it using a conjunction rather than just trying to use a comma. A comma basically isn't strong enough to create the kind of flow that we want. You can also use a subordinating conjunction. We haven't really talked about this so much, but you know those subordinating conjunctions like if, although, even, after. Those can be ways where you link two ideas as well. We love to go fishing in the spring because we get to spend time together. That works. After we tell family stories at night, we wake up and enjoy the time on the land. So there I switched the order of the sentences, but I've connected them, right? Let's look at another way. Okay, so we can use transition words to spell out how the sentences relate to each other. Remember we talked about chronologically, adversarially, additive. This can involve revising the sentences to help link how these sentences are connected in your thoughts. This is one of those things where sometimes in your thoughts, it's really obvious how those sentences are connected or linked together, but they may not be as obvious to your reader. Now, again, we're going to use that same base sentence. We love to go fishing in the spring. We get to spend time together. We tell family stories at night. We enjoy the time on the land. Now, here, I'm linking them. I still like that first sentence. We enjoy our time on the land because we get to spend time together. So now we've linked two different sentences. In addition, why do I keep writing addition now? I wonder if that's an autocorrect thing. In addition, comma, we love to go fishing so that we can eat traditional foods. As well, we tell family stories at night that help keep our culture alive. So here we've begun to use transition phrases to help link the sentences and explain them further, right? It sounds kind of funny that just those little tiny transitions can make your ideas more clear, but they really are effective that way. Now, sometimes people end up writing run-on sentences simply because they're making their sentences a bit too complicated. They're adding too many phrases, they're giving way too much information in one sentence. The best way to solve this is to slow down your writing. And you do that by adding more detail to each section of the sentence and then begin using periods. So here's an example. And again, I'm going to use the same base sentence to be our starting point. Okay. To me, one problem with this sentence is that the writer is moving too fast. They're basically kind of summarizing their ideas, or they're telling, they're not showing, right? Showing is where you kind of walk through the details and bring the scene to life for your reader, right? Whereas summarizing, like if I say, oh, she's sad, I've just summarized. But I could slow that way down and say, the girl flung herself on the bed. She pounded the mattress. Tears ran down her cheeks. You're still going to get the idea that she's sad, but I'm showing it much more clearly. So I'm going to do that with this sentence. So first, I'm going to look at, we love to go fishing in the spring. So how can I slow that sentence down and add more details? In the spring, my husband and I love to go fishing at our trap line with our children. So here, I explained who the we was, my husband and I. We love to go fishing. Where? At our trap line with our children. I haven't changed the sentence that much, but I have a much clearer picture of what's happening now. we get to spend time together. Okay, I'm going to add on to that. For one thing, we all enjoy getting to spend time together away from the distractions of the community. And I added that because, if you live in the same house, you probably are spending time together. But if you're off in the trap line, you're spending time together kind of more specifically. You're not wandering off to the store or going to visit friends. You're really kind of together as a family. The next sentence, we tell family stories at night. I moved that near the end, so I'll come back to that. We enjoy the time on the land. That is a very general sentence. There are so many specific details you could tell me to help me understand what are you doing that helps you to enjoy the time on the land so much, right? Picture that you're saying this to somebody who is from the city. Maybe they've never been camping. They've never spent any time in the land. They just think of it as a place full of bugs and dirt. They don't know why anybody would enjoy it. And you're trying to tell them the details. Here's what we love. So, for another thing, the entire family enjoys spending time on the land, seeing all the different animals, breathing the clean air, cooking on the open fire, and hiking through the bush. See, now with those details, you've brought it to life for somebody who's never done it before. At night, we sit around the fire telling stories about our people that my Gookum told me. So I've added a lot more details to we tell family stories at night. I'm showing you where it's happening. I'm also kind of telling you why it's happening, right? I'm passing on the stories that my Gookum told me. And then I'm kind of wrapping up my paragraph. Remember, we talked about not just racing out the door without saying goodbye. Here, I'm kind of adding that goodbye, right? When we finally go to bed, we all sleep so well because we have worked hard all day. Spending time on the land makes me feel alive. And now you can see we've taken that very short run-on sentence, we've turned it to an entire paragraph just by adding details. So that is one thing to look at in your writing. Are you maybe not telling enough details and you're trying to pack too much information into one sentence? Maybe you need to take a tiny part of that sentence, slow down, and give me some more details so I can picture it, like a little tiny movie almost. All right, we're getting close to the end of our time here. Now, sometimes people have the opposite problem, although I'll say this happens less. Some people will write with incomplete sentences or very short sentences. And while short sentences are not wrong, an entire paragraph of them sounds a little bit odd, almost like a drum beat, like dump, 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 dump. Because most paragraphs are more like a song. There's a mixture of shorter and longer sentences, and it sounds like a melody instead. And sometimes if you look carefully, you will see that some short sentences really are just incomplete sentences and you didn't notice, right? So on the next page, we're going to look at two ways to join two shorter sentences. And this would work with even incomplete sentences, okay? And we're going to turn them into one longer, more complex sentence. We're going to do this using subordinate clauses or subordinate conjunctions, basically. So if I've got, I will help the man, he deserves it. How can I connect those ideas? I will help the man, maybe because he deserves it. Now remember, with a subordinate conjunction, I'm going to turn that period into a comma. I'm going to write the word because. Now, I cannot leave a capital he because now it's in the middle of a sentence. So it needs to be a lowercase. Mary came up. We were talking about her. Huh. That makes me, I'm just picturing, I don't know, in my head, a bunch of people are talking about Mary. Maybe they're not saying nice things. And suddenly Mary shows up. So Mary came up right after we were talking about her. Um, uh, yeah, I'm going to say maybe after. Right after we were talking about her. And that's not necessarily a conjunction the way I've put it, but it is kind of linking the two concepts, okay? I admire Mr. Brown. He is my enemy. Okay, so that I'm trying to get across an adversarial relationship. I admire Mr. Brown even though he is my enemy. So comma, I don't know if do we really have enemies if we're not in a superhero movie. I don't know. Again, I got to take that capital and turn it into a lowercase. I came, you sent for me. Okay, so here the reason I came because you sent for me. I came, comma, because, oops, what happened there? Because you sent for me. And again, I got to make sure I take out that capital Y and turn it into a lowercase y. He knows he is wrong. He will not admit it. I'm going to start that. Even though he knows he is wrong, even though he knows he is wrong, he will not admit it. So now I'm going to change my period to a comma and turn the capital H into a lowercase h. Now, have I made a mistake here? Have I joined a sentence using two sentences using a comma? It looks like it, right? But I haven't, because even though is a subordinating conjunction, and this whole part here is a subordinate phrase. So remember that these can come at the beginning or at the end. It's totally legitimate to put the comma there because it's the even though that is actually joining those two sentences. It looks strange because at the beginning, but we do say that kind of thing all the time. So that's one time where it might look like you're using a comma, but actually you're using the subordinating conjunction. The man is rich. He is unhappy. Ooh, you don't think of that being the case, right? You could put this different ways. You could say the man is rich because the man is rich, he's unhappy. Maybe the being rich is causing him problems. Even though the man is rich, he is unhappy. The man is rich, but he is still unhappy. I'm going to say, I'm just going to use but. That's a very simple one. Technically, that's using a coordinating conjunction, but it works here, so I'm going to do it. The man is rich, comma, but he is unhappy, right? You wish to be believed, you must tell the truth. This one suggests the word if to me, like if you wish to be believed, I got to take the capital out. If you wish to be believed, you must tell the truth. Take out the period, turn it into a comma, and again, take out the capital. If you wish to be believed, you must tell the truth. Yeah, that works. The dog bites. He ought to be muzzled. How can I connect those? Dog bites, therefore, right? I'm giving you the reason. Because doesn't quite make sense there, right? The dog bites, therefore, he ought to be muzzled. Okay, that makes sense to me. It would be foolish to set out. It is raining. So why is it foolish to set out? Set out means like to travel, because it's raining. So I'm just going to write because is one of the handiest words ever. Comma, because it is raining. Call me at my office. You happen to be in town. So call me at my office if you happen to be in town. That would work. Call me at my office if you happen to be in town. I think we've got one time for the last one. The cat ran up a tree. She was chased by a dog. I could say when she was chased by a dog. I could use because there, but just to make it change when she was chased by a dog. Okay. So I'm just trying to show you different ways that you can revise and edit your writing to make it stronger, okay? We looked at questions 15 and 16 today. Tomorrow we will look at questions 17 and I think 18. Remember to look at the assignment, and after you've finished your first run through, check and make sure it has all the things the assignment has asked. If it doesn't, go ahead and revise it. Thank you so much for showing up, and I hope you are enjoying this course. See you tomorrow.